Sorry. Good morning to one and all present over here. Welcome to day 3 of our FDP on recent trends in data science. We are proud privileged to have two of our alumni as a resource person. First session will be on artificial intelligence and basics of machine learning. So let me introduce our first speaker of the session, Ms. Puspanjali Pandey, who is with us live from UK. Ms. Puspanjali Pandey has completed her bachelor's in information technology in the year 2016 from Theem College of Engineering, Boisar. Currently working with Sintel Private Limited, Pune as an associate consultant and now on site for its client based in UK. Working on different technologies like Java, Spring, Hibernate, SOAP, UPI, UI, Hadoop ecosystem, SQL and NoSQL, and building technologies like Maven, Gradle, etc. She is a certified trainer for core Java J2EE at Sintel Private Limited, Pune. She has participated and won in various technical and extracurricular activities during her graduation at Theem College of Engineering. With this brief introduction, I now invite Ms. Pushpanjali Pandey to take over the controls and start the session. Pushpanjali
Uh,
Pandey.
yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for that very warm welcome. I'll start with the presentation. Hello, everyone. Hope you all are safe and doing good. So, our today's topic is with the AI and some basic stuffs of machine learning. So, let's move it. But before moving on to the actual presentation, I would like to give one small examples, like which is based into our everyone's life. So, when we were a child and we were just learning to how to write alphabets, at that time our teacher or parents, they used to give us, like, they will write a letter for us, and then we as a child, we just repeat on the same letter each and every time to get it perfect and in the same shape which is given by our teacher or a parent. So that, from there only we started the artificial intelligence or machine learning into our life. We never realized that, but yes. So, how it is linked with the artificial intelligence and machine learning, we'll see it throughout the presentation, and we'll come to know that yes, into our day to day life as well, we are using the artificial intelligence and machine learning. So, let's start with the presentation. So, our today's agenda, so I have kept it very small and not very theoretical concepts. So, we'll just go from the basics of it. So, what is AI and machine learning? What are the benefits of adapting AI and ML into our lives? And then some of the use cases we'll discuss. And at the end of the presentation, I'll give you all guys one case study to implement and to see how actually AI and ML goes into our life and how it can ease our life with so many benefits into it. Moving on. So, first, what is AI and ML? So, like I said, the example in the beginning, so when we were a kid and we were writing any alphabets, so at that time we were repeating on that letter multiple times. So, that repeating of the letter multiple times, that means we were training ourselves to get that perfect alphabet. And once we get that alphabet written rightly, then we modify them like in by improving our handwriting. Sometimes we write in cursive writing, sometimes in block letters. So I'll explain how these things comes into this picture. So artificial intelligence, it is a technique which enables computers to mimic human intelligence using logic or some of the trees or any of the algorithms. And machine learning is a subset of that artificial intelligence which gives us a statistics, and based on that statistics we improve our machine to make the task very efficient and very experienced. And to get that very much effectively we use deep learning. So like I said, we just repeat the letters and then we keep on repeating them to get it on perfect, and then we improve like into our handwritings. So just like that this flow goes. So first artificial intelligence, we bring some actions which is performed by a human. For example, nowadays we all are seeing the Amazon Alexa, then Google Home. It's all are based on human voice. So as you give them a voice, it performs an action for us. And but by performing that action, behind that a lot of logic and statistics have been performed. Like let's say how the machine would understand that we have to perform a certain action. So that is based on the statistics which we provide. We as a human, we say that go and perform this action, because the machines they understand only binary logics, and to write them programming comes into the picture, which we do using this machine learning and following with up the deep learning processes. Okay, any questions till now? All right, I'll take that as no. Moving ahead now. So, is machine learning really an AI? So, nowadays, what is happening is let's say we automate any process, then people are having some misconceptions that this is an AI. So, recently in an MIT paper, one of the professor he said that people are having misconceptions about an AI. Like, for example, if they are building any automation task or any of the process they are automating, then it is an AI. But no, that's not an AI. It is a machine learning, where AI, in the next slide, we'll see how AI is categorized into two parts. So, machine learning, as I said in my previous slides, it is the statistics which we provide to a machine to perform any actions. So there is a fine line between this intelligence and just a math or any automation which we perform. So that's how the machine learning is related to AI, but machine learning is not equal to AI. Then next, the types of AI. So there are two major subcategories of AI. The first one is applied AI, which is the most common form of AI, and it includes everything from intelligent stock trading system and automated driving and etc. Then the second one is generalized AI, which is less common because it is quite more difficult to create. And ideally, a generalized AI would be capable of handling all kinds of different tasks, just like humans are. Although these AIs aren't common, many researchers have been making advancement into these fields. But till now, like we are not at that peak of building these generalized AI categories into the process. So, for example, I would say the military simulations or any of the automation of the cars like automatic drivers, these are some of the examples of the generalized AI. Then next we'll have how the ML and AI generic process flows. So as we see here are five blocks. We can see them as a block like source data, prepare data, train the model, test with other data, refine, deploy. So, source data is the sources of the data from where we'll gather all the data. For example, let's say I'll have to build one weather application. So, for that weather application, I would need a location of that particular place and then all the altitude, longitude based on what I can derive the weather information. So, that is our source of data. Prepare the data. So whenever we receive any form of data, it is not in a well structured manner. So we'll have to refine that data, we'll have to cleanse the data, and then we'll have to train that model in such a way that it can identify all types of performance. Like for example, I have it into my next slides. I'll show you there, like what is the need of training that model so that we can get an accurate result from them. Then test with other data. Again, this we'll see by example. Like we'll have to test that data with other set of data to see that whether that result is accurate or not. And finally, we'll have to refine and deploy that process. So this is how the whole generic process flows in between ML and AI. Do we have any questions till now? Okay, thank you. Next, yeah. So, like I was mentioning in the previous slide, that we'll have to clean the data and then compare with the other data. So, as you all can see here, these are four categories of red apple. Sorry, not four, it's five categories. And into all five categories, we can see the different shapes and a bit different shades of red apple. So, we'll have to provide all this set of the data to our model so that it can identify whether it's from like we know like some of the apples are known as Kashmiri apple, then red apples and Gala apple. So how machine can identify the difference between them? So hence we'll have to provide all this information to machine so that he can identify and distinguish between the different flavors of it. And like I said, we'll have to test it with other data. So as we can see, I have written here the banana, orange, and pomegranate. So like we always say that we cannot compare an apple with an orange. So just like that, only based on the color or the shape, we cannot compare. We'll have to have the everything into that. Like pomegranates are there, which kind of similar looks like the apple into the pictures. Well, not in the real world, but yeah, into the pictures. So hence we'll have to provide that data as well, because machine is will perform the same only the actions which we human ask him to perform. So if we do not provide this different set of another set of data, he might get confused between the very red apple and the pomegranate, and it would result into a kind of disaster, we would say, if someone is asking for an apple and he'll get a pomegranate. Like we all can imagine what will be the consequences of that. So yes, we'll have to provide all different combinations with all different sets of data to our model to train it in such a way that we'll get a very accurate result as we can sense it in a human by human eyes. So hence this data cleansing and all the different process are required to perform a very accurate data and automation, or we can say the artificial intelligence. Then the next is, yeah. So, like I said in the beginning, we'll have just a brief introduction of the AI ML, and then we'll move into the case study, how we can implement it into our daily lives. So, first we'll see that what are the benefits of AI and ML adoption. So, nowadays, you all must have been seeing that all the companies and everyone is moving towards the AI and ML, and it has been said that the data science will be the sexiest job into the 20th century. However, in this pandemic situation, everything is now shut. But yes, it is still going to be the sexiest job into the 21st century. So, what are the benefits of that? Let's see it one by one. So, the first one is making the best use of a data scientist's time. So, while the power of ML is unrivaled, data scientists spend around 80% of their time on preparing and managing data for analysis. Hence, only 20% of their time is used to derive insights. So, we all must be aware that mainly there are two categorized. One is the data scientist, and another one will be the data analyst. So, one, like we saw in the previous slides, the data is the main key here to perform the AI and ML. So it all revolves around the data. If we have the correct set of data with different set of combinations, and if we model them correctly, then it is very easy for us to get the result out of them. So hence, like we see, this is from the Forbes magazine. So 80% of the time is mainly spent onto the data analysis, managing of the data, cleansing of the data, preparing them, and only 20% of the time is required to derive a perfect insights from them. Then the next is converting the power of machine learning into business value. So, yeah, like on the above one, we got the insight from them, but it will be only effective until we use it into our business values. So, while 60% of companies agree that big data will help improve their decision making and competitiveness, only 20% indicate that they are currently generating strategic value from their idea. So I'll just give a brief example of the big data here. Like, we must get confused like how the big data is coming into the picture. So like we saw into the previous slides, we'll have to perform the cleansing on the data and perform various options, we can say. And data is not some into the bytes or into the MBs. It will get hell lot of data from any of the source. So to manage all that data, we need big data. So based on their volume, velocity, and variety, we can handle them using the big data. We have a lot of other technologies into big data, such as Hadoop, Spark, Scala, and all those. In fact, in every 6 months, we get a new technology into big data to perform the same actions with different results and with more accurate results. So that is how the big data come into the picture when it comes to AI and ML. Then the next is embedding machine learning into the fabric of your business. So the value of the data science relies upon operationalizing model within business applications and process it. Yet 50% of the predictive model don't get implemented. So like we said, and that fine line which we discussed in the starting between the AI and ML. So yeah, that is this when comes into the picture. So we train our model, but we do not 100% implement that predictive model into our business applications. So hence we'll have to work towards that generalized category of the AI so that we can get as much as benefit from that into our business values as well. The next, these are some of the use cases of AI and ML. These are very few I have listed down here, but there are a lot of use cases nowadays. So, natural language understanding, deep learning enable video games, and decision making self driving vehicles. So, let's focus on this self driving vehicle for now. So, like we saw, that we'll have to train our model in every aspect in such a way that it can protect us from, in all sense, like normal human can do. So if you see in the picture very clearly, there are cameras at all the sides and there is no human sitting there. It is being driven by an automatic driver. So what is the purpose behind these cameras onto every side? So let's say I have trained my model that while you are driving, maybe a tree can come into your way. So that key tree is can so the tree is can be a large tree or the small tree, so we don't know. Hence, we'll have to provide all the different combinations of the trees, for example, to our model, and we'll have to train that model so that he can take an accurate decision. So let's say if it's a small tree, then he'll take a small turn from there and he can move ahead. But if it's a large tree, he may have to step back and then drive back to from the another way. So hence these all different combinations will have to provide to our model. Okay. Then next, yeah. So like I said, it will be a small introductory lecture, and then we'll see the use case and which you guys have to implement. So do we have any questions so far? All right. So this is the problem. I have specified the problem, the solution, and everything for you guys, and you guys just have to implement it. I'll suggest you some of the like easiest way as well to start with, and then you can modify it accordingly as you go along. So in our life, we all have must experience the IVR thing, like the call center. So when we call any call center for a help, so you must have experienced that we'll have to select certain options. So for example, let's say I'm calling into a bank and we have the option that welcome to so and so, let's say HDFC Bank. So welcome to an HDFC Bank. Select press 1 for your account details, press 2 for your statement details, press 3 for any other details, and press 4 to speak with our direct advisor. So we press these options. Then after that options, we again perform certain options, and this is how that cycle goes on. And there the customer waiting time increases before connecting to an agent or an advisor to get the solution of that particular question. Okay, so like we can see in this diagram as well. So let's say here is the daily hotline which we use to call, then press certain options. Then there are certain things like online shopping, payments, returns, payment problems, online payment, other payment method, these all things. And then after that, we'll connecting with a consultant, waiting time maybe exceed 5 minutes. So even after performing these options, we do not get directly connected to an consultant or an agent to get the solution. So again we have been put on hold, and then and even sometimes we do not get the response as well, and call gets disconnected. So I feel it's very annoying nowadays. So hence we can build something which can resolve our this issue at least some at some extent. Well, we cannot replace the human agent completely, but at least for some extent we can get an information. So let's see. So it becomes very annoying as the desired person cannot be reached due to lot many options and difficult navigations, as we can see in this picture as well. It takes more waiting time for a customer to connect with right agent. So when I say this, that it takes time to connect with right agent, so let's say I have an issue with some fraud events, and at the initial stage I have been connected with some consultant who is not having access to those fraud events. Then again call will get passed on from that agent or transferred from that agent to that fraud event consultant. So that waiting times get increased as we go along with our complex queries. Then it has been always too many options and menu labels that makes easy for a caller to get lost. Yeah, easily. I mean, definitely. Like let's say we press on the find shop, and then we by mistakenly click on any other shop option, so which gets us back to the online shopping, which we do not want it to go. So yeah, these with these options and menu labels as well, we can get lost into these things anytime. As per the latest survey by a live person, 53% of people spend 10 to 20 minutes on hold every week. 86% people go on hold whenever they call a business. All the people get annoyed when they are kept on hold, and as per the Harris poll, bad customer service cost Americans up to $108 billion per year. So that's a huge, right? I mean, just to get a solution for your problem, and when they say it's a toll free or a customer care center, and still we are spending this much amount to get that service, so it is actually very annoying as per me. So let's see how we can build a solution to get around this problem. So yeah. So this is a kind of functional flow diagram which I have prepared. So let's say, I mean, imagine how about we have a Google Assistant or any other assistant, for example, Amazon Alexa as well, there to support us. So I mean, like we use a Google Mini Home for that example, we say that Google, please play this song. So and then it plays that song, and if it is not able to recognize our song, then it replies us back that sorry, I'm not able to recognize your voice. Then we again say it in a different manner. So what if we have that certain type of example into our call center as well? So let's say this is a human. Okay. Oh, sorry, this is a human is giving us some command. So the first one is customer makes a call to customer care or a call center and selects the language he wants. Then virtual assistants receives a call and asks for a user authentication. Virtual assistants means our maybe a Google Home or an Alexa, those assistants. Okay. So how this will happen is we'll have to provide the NLP, that is natural language processing framework. Maybe like here, for example, I have taken the Google example and Google APIs, I have used it. You guys can use Amazon AWS services as well. It's totally fine with us. So yeah, so we'll have that NLP to translate that human voice in such a voice that our virtual assistant can understand that. So for that, we can use a Google Translator APIs as well. Then in next step, the request goes. So that speech to we'll have to use that speech to text API here, and we'll authorize. So let's say, for example, assistant is asking us our birth. What is your date of birth? to authorize us, and we provide the date of birth. So that again, that speech to text, it request and response, this is how it works. The authorization is done and the response is sent back again to our virtual assistant. Then uh, the fifth one is request to domain specific APIs based on user actions. So, for example, I'm calling into a bank and I want my balance details. So, maybe the call is transferred to that specific domain, the person who is expert into that domain, and the call is transferred to that. Then next is we have these APIs where we are converting a speech to text and services API text to speech, and the request and response is happening back and forth between them. And then the response is again sent back to the virtual assistant so that it can give the response back to our customer. Okay. So, and based on this language selection, virtual assistant will transfer a call to an appropriate agent. So this eight step is for, like, which I mentioned in the beginning, that let's say we have, if we have a fraud event and we'll have to wait for that much time to connect with that agent. So how about we train our this bot with this initial information of the customer, and he can authorize them and provide all the basic details what is needed for the customer. And in case of any complex queries or complex decisions, he transferred the call to a real life human agent. So it makes our life easy. So again, we are not replacing human here, but we are just making his work easy with our technology, AI and ML. So I hope we are clear with the use case here. Is anyone having any questions around this? Please feel free to ask. Oh, okay, okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, sure. So this is the functional flow. Now we'll see how this flow will go as a technical flow. So I have just tried to make some technical design. Well, I'm not an architecture, but I have just tried to make some small technical design, like how we can do it. So again, the same. Here we will be using auth services. So Google is having is different APIs to authenticate the server or for text to speech or speech to text conversion. So for all these things, we have Google APIs already available. So we can use them whenever it is required. So let's say we are using here outsource to authorize the service. For speech to text, we are using Google Translator's API and speech to text conversion. Then we'll have to perform the load balancing while calling APIs. So what does load balancing means? So it is not that at one time we'll receive only one call. There may be possibilities that at the same time multiple customers are calling to get the solution of their queries. So hence there comes the load balancing into the picture, which we'll have to perform while calling the APIs. And for that as well, we'll have different mediators. For example, F5 is a load balancer which we can use here to balance the load between the calls and the call centers, I mean the virtual assistant. Then we'll have the API service layer where all the actions will define all the actions. So user actions, then creation of intents and NLP, all the actions which we need to perform, we can define into this service layer. Then a feature engineering, so a skill set and the actions. So skill set is the creation of an skill set based of an application. So like we'll have to train our assistant in such a way that he should be able to assist our customers with the skills. Like we can skill him for the basic, all basic information about the customer, and then what are the actions required for that skills. If the skills are not matching into his skill set, then the call will be transferred to another actual human agent, and then we'll have to convert this text into the speech, because here a human is communicating with a virtual assistant. So human should not feel like that, yeah, it's a robot or a bot. So that communication should be happen perfectly, hence we'll have to perform all these activities. And this is here is the diagram which we saw in the beginning, that how the generic process flows between the AI and ML. So this is the data sources, let's say user speech, the customer's voice, IVR input data, and user options. So these are the few I have listed here from which we'll have to get all the data to train our model or a bot for that matter. Then data extraction. So here we'll have a lot of information, and from that we'll have to take an extract of the data which is actually required for our virtual assistant. Data preparation. So like we said, we saw here the skill set and the actions. So we'll have to prepare the data in such a way like it is the domain specific and what will be the action onto that domain specific data. Then dimension reduction and the data modeling. So data modeling again, like there where the user queries, your user model and model evaluation, and then the call is transferred to a help desk. Like in case of complex queries, the call will be transferred to a help desk. So this is the entire flow in which we will have to prepare our data and will have to make our bot ready in such a way that he can help our customers with his all his basic problems, and the customer waiting time is reduced there. So like they say that our customer service is best, but in fact in reality we know how best it is, but this way we can actually make them best and very user friendly to communicate with the customer and the virtual assistant. So yeah, this is the whole use case which we need to perform. The next is like this is kind of I have built one slide. So what innovation which we built through the above problem. So it is a virtual agent. Like uh, as of now, we do not have like multiple companies are working onto this to get this implemented. But currently, in right now, we do not have any such an agent or such virtual agent, I would say. Then the real-time customer query detection based on previous user actions. So yeah, this innovation like we can perform. These are kind of innovations which we can add into our this use case as we go move along. So let's say a customer calls and he had some actions, and we store that data into our data model. The next time if the same customer is calling with the same query, then in that case our virtual agent will be able to help them based on the previous data which we have stored and trained with the model. So one thing to keep in mind with this is the more frequently perform an action onto some of the actions on the same actions, I'm sorry, the same actions, the more accurate result we'll get. So let's say if every day we perform same action, we'll get master into that. So the same way goes with the our bot and the model as well. So if he performs certain actions for multiple times, we will get an accurate result every time. So yeah, then the authentication and authorization of customer via virtual assistant. Yeah, so like nowadays in some of the companies they ask for the PAN details, then Aadhaar details, all these informations, whereas here we can directly authenticate our customer using the virtual assistant. Then automated feedback portal. Yes, we can embed that automated feedback portal so that we'll not have to fill that online forms or any offline forms to give our feedback. So it will get be filled automatically. Then virtual assistant complementing with human power. So yeah, like I have been saying from the beginning that we are not here to replace the human. We are just making his work easy with our technology and the innovations or with the AI and ML. So virtual assistant will be complementing the human power. It will not replace the human. Okay, like because there is a lot of misconception in the market right now that after a few years the human and IT job will be lost and all the robots will be placed everywhere. But no, it's not like that. We cannot ever replace the human power. So yeah, we are just complementing it with the new latest technologies to make his life easy and better. Now, the real-time data modeling based on previous history of customer to avoid on-hold time user. So yes, this is for in case of let's say fraud events. So for the first time, if the customer is having any fraud related queries, and at that time if the virtual assistant is not able to answer or the reply or response back, and the call is transferred to the human agent, so that whole communication will be saved, and the model will be trained in such a way so that next time if the customer comes with the same query, agent will be able to help them himself, and that waiting time again will be reduced. So like I said, we can enhance it as much as we want as we move along. Then voice, pitch, and speech detection is a way to authenticate user and customer. So yeah, we can authenticate a customer or a user based on their voice and speech detection as well. This is another way of detecting them and authorizing them. Then virtual assistant calls to customer to get feedback for previous service served to them. So till now we just saw that customer is calling virtual assistant, but now here an assistant can call customer himself to get a feedback for the previous service served. Well, this happens very rarely in the real time that any customer care is calling us and asking us for the feedback like yeah, last time we served you, how was the communication and blah blah. But that doesn't happen. But with the help of virtual assistant, we can make that as well possible so that we are serving our customer in every manner which we can to make their life ease and to get an accurate results. So the next is a value add of these. Well, what will be the value of for this POC? So first of all, this POC is applicable for all the domains because call centers are everywhere now, whether it can be a healthcare or a banking domain or an insurance domain or any shopping center, everywhere this is there. So this is applicable in every domain. Other than that, so to allowing contact center operators to optimize the call centers by ensuring that live agents aren't answering some mundane questions, effectively incorporating virtual assistant into an IVR system potentially increases some business opportunities for us. Then this solution can deliver a more productive initial interaction for clients. We're providing support to live agent by providing additional context to a call, perhaps helping the agent suggest additional products or services. So on this point, I would like to highlight that we will be we can or we will be storing the all the data which we are while communicating between an agent and a customer so that when the call gets transferred to a human agent, he would not ask again the same information to customer. We will save that all the data so that the live agent can have access and he will have the context of the call that yeah, the call was regarding this issue and I'll have to help them with this issue. So and also based on that, agent can suggest some additional products and additional services as well. Like for example, if the customer has called for any loan purposes and if he's asking for certain loans, so based on that we can agent can also suggest him yeah, we have these offers on these kind of loans and the like other all the services which will be related to that context. Then our solution can be used in sentiment analysis, helping agents manage difficult callers. And of course, all this information is captured in a data warehouse, allowing companies to mine and always the data to make future business decisions. So yeah, like data warehouse will be storing all our data into the data warehouse so that by using different technologies of the machine learning, for example, clustering, then classifying all these things, and we can make better decisions based on that data. And we can also perform the sentiment analysis onto that data so that we can allow an agent to manage difficult callers. So sometimes what happens is some let's say some old person is calling to a call center to a virtual assistant, and sometimes his voice is we won't be able to understand his voice. So based on that sentiment analysis and the pitch and tone of that voice, we can identify yeah, maybe this is that issue. Like sometimes we get hyper on a call, so agent can understand and manage the callers accordingly, that according to that sentiment analysis. So yep. Yep. So that's it for now. Guess, yeah. Thank you, everyone. And please feel free to ask any questions if you have around this case study. Case study, I would, I would just like to add that this case study, if you are a beginner into this, like AI and ML, you can use the simple dialogue flow API, which is of Google, and using that, it is a kind of very interactive interface which Google has provided, and using that, you can create this case study for a initial and beginner level, and then as you go along with the algorithms and the configurations, you can modified according to your requirements. So, yep, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, so NLP it is the natural language processing. So it is basically used in a way to convert the text into speech and speech into text and to identify all the. So what happens into the NLP is, let's say I am speaking right now, so all these words and everything will be stored into some of the database, and we will store. So like I am speaking here, but the whole communication is getting converted into a speech and it is stored, and based on that the model is getting trained. So that's how the NLP works, the process. It's a process kind of to convert sometimes text into the speech or speech into the text. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, like there are mainly three categories, like the velocity, variety, and one more is there which I don't recall now. So there are three V's of data. So when I say velocity, velocity means the speed in which the data is coming into a database or into any source. So like I said, for example, if we see a Twitter, so Twitter we do not get, let's say, the 10 tweets or 100 tweets in a day. It is, the count is in millions and billions. So that is a kind of huge data for us, the big data. The speed is there, the variety is there, because on Twitter we post a pictures, a content, a videos and everything. So that variety is there, and also it is very huge to manage. So hence that is the concept of big data there. Yeah. Do we have any more questions? Okay, so like we are discussing about the big data, so I will just give a brief introduction onto the Hadoop and its ecosystem, like how we can manage this data. So nowadays, like people are saying that big data. So what actually does it mean? So like I gave an example of Twitter. So to handle all those data, we have a different ecosystems into the market. So Hadoop is there, Apache Spark is there, then for real time processing Kafka is there. So all these technologies are used into the big data right now to manage the data accordingly and as per the requirement. Yep.
Yes, one question is there, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
What are the algorithm used for NLP? Can they use Navy-based algorithm in NLP?
Yes, so we can use the naive-based algorithm into the NLP. And like when we are saying that what algorithm we can use, so it purely based on the requirement, what is our requirement. So basically machine learning, it just give us the probability, like, yeah, this is happening and what will be the probability to happen this action after performing certain things. So there are different sets of algorithms, like classic naive-based algorithm, then decision tree is there. So different algorithms are there. So based on the requirement, we can pick which is the required for us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Can
Yes.
you please suggest some online and offline resources for NLP?
For NLP, so I have been following up like the Google's APIs and their documentation for this. So yeah, for Google documentation is the best which I have felt for now. Yeah. And I also did some of the Udemy courses, so that's it. And but also certainly there are some very nice articles and the videos are present on YouTube, so we can use them as well.
Some of the online courses are also available
Mm-hmm.
through spoken tutorial, as well as some of them are on NPTEL websites. So
Yes,
subscribers
yes.
can just log into it, and then they can go through the NLP.
Yes, yes,
And
yes. And also there are a lot of like research papers are present, such as IEEE or MIT papers for that instance. So we can use them as well. They all are very helpful.
one more question is there from your junior. Ma'am, please can you tell us about your journey from bachelor's life to this stage till now at UK? What and how you studied about resources and all stuff? What you have pushed, what had pushed you to motivate us? We want some
Uh-huh.
word of motivation from your end.
Okay, that's a very big question to be honest. Like me being a motivator is like okay, so I'll just reply this into a simple things like I have not done like any specific trainings or any specific things for this. So it is just that whatever comes along and I have been exploring those technologies. Like for it's been in 1 year I am into the UK, and right now I am completely into the automation stuffs like these POCs and all this automation thing I am performing right now. But before this, for 2 years I was a Java developer, Java and microservice developer. So yeah, so in IT, like and especially with the service based companies, like it's a thumb rule that whatever comes in your way you'll have to grab that opportunity and you'll have to work onto that. So yes, that is what I have been following till now.
Can you elaborate something more about how was your student life at Theem College so that students can get benefited and motivated?
So student life was very good, like in Theme College. So we have been participating into the different competitions as well, some inter-college technical presentations and everything, and then board wars, and so that helped us, and especially that is helping me right now to into this my automation profile. So all those ideas which we discovered at that time and everything which we studied into our syllabus as well, the AI and ML, it was included into our syllabus that from that time. So from there we got that zeal to move into this field, and this is helping us a lot right now. Even sometimes while performing something or even preparing some documents, we recollect all those words which we had heard from our professors. So that is very helpful to come along with this till here.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. One more question is
And
there from
yeah,
our
sorry.
participant. Ma'am,
Mm-hmm.
can you tell us a little brief about what data modeling? What is about data modeling?
Okay, so like I'll just open that slide for your reference now. So
Yes,
this
ma'am.
is yeah, this is the kind of data modeling which we'll have to do. So we'll have to clean our data, process our data, and train that model so that based on whatever comes in our way, it can perform that action. So, for example, like we saw that trees example into the automated driving car, or maybe the fruits example which we saw here. So to identify the accurate result, we'll have to provide all types of various types of varieties of data to our model, and we'll have to train him. We'll have to make as smart as human. Like we human, when we see anything, we realize and we can understand that yeah, it is an apple, for example. So we'll have to train our model as well in such a way that it can identify that. So that is these are the process which are involved into the data modeling brief. So this is the kind of source of the data to refining and the training and the deployment. This is the entire process with the data modeling.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll
Thank
wait
you.
for some time for some more
Mhm.
questions.
Sure. Sure.
Can you tell us how we can go ahead with natural language processing and sentimental analysis? Sentiment analysis, you have said something about sentiment analysis.
Yes, yes, yes. So based on the sentiment analysis is like based on some human actions or human emotions, we can say. So the model can identify that, yeah, if someone is crying, then he can identify, yeah, the person is crying. If it is like sad, then based on their expressions and everything, they can identify, then yes. So for that as well, this data modeling comes into the picture. So for sentiment analysis, we'll have to train the model with all those keywords like the sad, happy, then some synonyms of sad as well, whatever is available right now, and the happy or the dancing or the crying, so that our model can identify based on those keywords that yes, the person is sad, for example. So, yeah, that is the sentiment analysis and how to proceed with that. So, did you mean by the article or any tutorial for that, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I guess like I said, I have been following up the Google only for this, the Google's documentation. But yeah, there are like Udacity, Udemy, and Coursera. A lot of courses are present there, and our tutorials point is also there. So a lot of articles are as well present there for this.
Can you say something about principal component analysis and how it is helpful in reducing the features of our data set?
Principal component analysis. Okay, well, I'm not very close to that terminology, but from the name, I can say that like there will be some component which are very mainly used into our model, and we'll have to process them according to those components.
Yes, one more question is there.
Mm-hmm.
Suggest some research problems in ML and AI which normally industry is taking up nowadays.
Okay, so one is like which we discussed just now about that virtual agent. Then again, so right now in industries, what is happening, like especially into my industries, I'm into the banking domain for now. So what they are doing is they're automating all these small features, for example, the customer creation process, or to provide any solution to the customer. So we are automating all these small features into that. But like I have been looking for the research papers of the Google and Amazon and all the reputed companies. So yes, like for now this virtual agent is kind of at the hit list onto them. And apart from that, like into the healthcare domains also we can use this. Like for example, the customer is calling and the agent can provide the prescriptions to them based on the initial health of them, initial information of initial stage of their health. So kind of first aids provide them. So this was the one of the use case which I heard into the healthcare domain. Then also there are some researchers happening around the military area. So people are trying to simulate that whole military process and how we can help our soldiers and militaries at the borders with our AI and ML. So also they are including some drones and all the activities so that the drone can have a look across the border and can notify our soldiers that yes, something is happening or not. So all these things are right now happening in the market.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll wait for some more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Sure.
or you want to explain the case study?
Sorry, I just missed that.
Any case study you are saying about the case study, some case study. So you
Case
want
study.
to explain the question?
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can discuss about these military simulations into the detail. So, like I said, I was just reading one research paper a few days back. So, what was mentioned there is so they will be having drone, and so even the drone is kind of model for us, and we'll train that model and everything using again our ML and AI process. So the drone will be traveling across the borders from and forth, and and he can like let us know if any attacks are coming or if any malicious things are happening. So, and with the help of that, our soldiers can be aware of certain things. And also they had included like the borders which we have, like the fencing and everything. So we can apply some kind of things. I don't recall that name. It was something related to the electronics things, so that it can also protect us from any malicious and superstitious attacks from our counterpart at that end. So this was the recent use case which I was just reading few days back. And other than that, like I said, the use case which we just saw here, so this can be applicable in all the domains. So we can use it into the healthcare as well, just like we were discussing before this. So agent can pick up a call from the customer, can ask the initial condition, and based on that, agent itself can provide him some prescriptions. And like here in UK, what is happening is even we cannot get let's say any painkillers or anything without a doctor's prescriptions. And for doctor's prescriptions, like especially into this pandemic situation, we'll have to call them, make an appointment, and then after that appointment the call will be transferred to a doctor, and then doctor will prescribe us, or they will send medicine back to the pharmacy and we'll have to go back to the pharmacy. So this whole process is there. So maybe we can reduce that process as well with this, where an agent itself is prescribing us some first aid medicines and to improve the condition at initial stage, and we can get them and we can use it like and recover. So this is actually, I find it very helpful in aspect of all the domains. Even for the insurance thing, if we see, so insurance, when we call, there are a lot of options which they speak, and then again call is getting transferred from one manager to another manager. So let's say if an our virtual agent is providing us all the information at the initial stage, there will be no need to wait for that period and then get a solution for that. So this use case, and hence I gave a lot of thought, and then I picked up this use case so that even the students and in fact everyone can uh, build this and see how we can use it into our lives, and it will actually make our life easy. As we can see here, this figure, it is like very huge figure for us. Sorry, $108 billion per year, and it is just to take the service. So yeah, we can reduce all these things by this feature.
Yes, we have our director sir on line. So I
Mm-hmm.
request our director sir to say some few words.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, Puspanjali, it was a very informative and very nicely managed session. I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling proud to say that my students have really scaled highs, and you are one of them. Really motivated the people to a very large extent, and
Mm-hmm.
the way you presented was too beautiful.
Thank you, sir.
I many a time have been receiving lot of thanks from you guys, but this is my privilege and proud moment to propose lot of thanks for you actually.
Yes,
Be
sir.
in touch and be in touch, and as and when we
Sure.
require your service, we'll be happily contacting you. And God bless
Yes.
you, and God bless your juniors, which are today motivated and guided by you in a very upcoming and nicely usable field of machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank
there
you.
lies the future, and with the blessings of you guys, we have this year started a special program,
Mm-hmm.
the degree in computer engineering, specialization in artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Okay,
So
that's great.
we got this program just 15 days back, and this year would be
Mm-hmm.
our first year to start that program. So help
Okay.
of you guys would be required in future too, to
Sure,
guide us,
sir.
to ensure us that student of next generation get the maximum benefit out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes,
thank you
yes.
for being with us, and wish you happy stay there in UK.
Thank you so much,
Do
sir.
do your duties as sincerely as you have been doing, and
Mm-hmm.
God will help you, bless you, to scale more heights in time to come. Thank you so much. God bless you, Puspanjali.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, you are
So
most welcome.
the speaker is giving one case study or assignment kind of thing, which
Hmm,
may take around 1 hour or so.
hmm,
So we will share this assignment or case study through the WhatsApp group,
hmm.
and we can get back through the WhatsApp itself, and we will post it to the speaker through the channel.
Mhm.
So I would like to conclude now. On behalf of all the participants, faculty members present over here, principal sir, director sir, and the college management, I thank Pushpanjali Yadav for such a wonderful and informative session. Hope the participants got to know the different concepts and insight of AI and ML. With this, we conclude our session and we'll take a break for completing the assignments, and we'll start the second session by about 12 o'clock.
Thank you, everyone.
In the meantime, if the participants have any questions, they can post it in the group so that we can address and revert it back to the participants. Thank you. With this, we conclude our session. Rahat sir. Yes, sir. We can conclude the session now.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon to one and all over here. Welcome back to session 2. Now we have Mr. Kunal Jadhav with us for delivering his session on software development lifecycle. Let me introduce him before we start the session. Mr. Kunal Jadhav has completed his Bachelor's of Engineering in Computer Science in the year 2016 from Theem College of Engineering, and he secured a certificate of merit for ranking first in all semesters of engineering. Currently working with Qatar Islamic Bank as an Android developer since 2019. Prior to this, he was working as a software engineer in various banks in India and abroad. He is a certified trainer for Android, Kotlin programming, Kotlin web development programmer, etc. He was a resource person for 2 days workshop on Android app development using Java and Kotlin at Atharva College of Engineering, Mumbai in 2018. He also delivered hands-on session on Android app development at Theem College of Engineering in 2018 as well as 2019. He has received client appreciation for reduction in code base by 40%. With this brief introduction, I now call upon Mr. Kunal Jadhav to take over the control and start the session. Yes, Kunal.
Good afternoon, respected faculty and dear students present. Thank you, Dr. Amir, for introducing me. It's been a great pleasure, and I'm honored and obliged to get invited for this seminar, and the topic for discussion today is software development life cycle. Before getting into that, I'll talk about my career history. I'm a certified Java, Android, and Kotlin developer, and I've delivered practical hands-on training in these technologies. Back during my engineering days, I had an opportunity to work with 2 companies as an intern on Java platform using the web and Android. And in the final year of engineering, I wanted to scale better, and that's how I developed and published a freelance project, which was based on typical 3-tier architecture with Android in the front end, PHP in the middleware, and MySQL as the backend. At present, I'm working with Qatar Islamic Bank, and I'm responsible for designing, developing, deploying, and maintaining their Android apps, and in 2 verticals, namely corporate and retail banking. It's my pleasure, and I'm honored to be a part of this bank, which is awarded as the best digital bank across Middle East and North Africa. It is also awarded as the best bank in the Qatar, and we are also awarded for our contribution towards innovation through our mobile banking app, which is for our retail customers by the Global Finance and Review Institution. So this is a short introduction about myself, and I have precisely 4 years of full-time relevant work experience in the software development vertical of IT. Before we get into the discussion of the topic today, I want to make you understand why did I choose to speak on this topic. The audience, I believe, the faculties and the students present who are in 3rd or 4th year of engineering, we know about the theoretical aspects and the significance of this topic, but how it is used today in the modern IT world, where the demand of IT applications is increasing day by day. So we'll translate theoretical to practical aspects on this topic. Now, phases of SDLC, as you all can see, the first phase is planning and requirement analysis. Now, theoretically, it means what? Okay, so back during my engineering days, I also felt like, how are these things correlated? So when I go to the planning and requirement analysis phase, a business decides what are the business requirements for deploying a software, what are the accomplishments it needs to make, and how will it help its users to digitalize themselves with ease of operations. Once this is laid down, I will get into in-depth discussion on this topic later on. Let me speak about the different steps that are involved in SDLC. After that is designing project architecture, where today's applications are typically based on a three-tier architecture, whether be it backend, hosting on the web, Android, iOS, be it the middleware, which is responsible for server operations, fetching the data from the database, maybe normalizing it, formatting it into a format that is acceptable by the clients, namely XML and JSON. And the backend lies with the database, whether it could be SQL or no SQL. Then comes the development phase, then the testing phase, then the deployment phase, and the maintenance phase. So this is just an overview about the steps that are involved in SDLC, and we'll get into in-depth discussion about all these. Since theory covers the different types of models, SDLC models, I would not like to elaborate on what does every model do and how does it differentiate itself from the other models. Just to give an example about why is Agile model the most accepted SDLC model in today's society, where the demand of IT is increasing day by day, and how are we able to service them? If I compare Agile to a waterfall model, so a waterfall model is a progressive successive model with a disadvantage that you cannot iterate back to the earlier steps from the present step. I mean to say that if you're developing a software and you have cleared the software integration testing as well as user acceptance testing, and you are going on to the deployment phase, at that point in time, if you find any bug or error in the software, you cannot iterate back. That's the biggest advantage of waterfall model. Similarly, there are some disadvantages of iterative, spiral, as well as V-shaped model as compared to Agile, and that's why Agile is the most widely accepted SDLC model today. Agile in layman term means being adaptable, being flexible. Now, when it comes to IT, we need to be flexible with the business modules. If you consider a typical e-commerce app, okay, or a e-commerce software, it has login modules. Then you have the listing page where you see the products and categories, and then you go to the payment section. So when you develop any project in Agile, what happens is when you're developing a module, suppose you develop the login module, it goes to the testing. Okay, we don't wait for the complete software to be built with all the modules. When you develop a particular module, you pass it to the testing phase. From the testing phase, you wait for the customer feedback. If the customer wants to iterate over it, gives a positive feedback and approval, we can proceed to another module. But if you want some changes in the existing module, we have to iterate back from the testing phase to the development phase. And this is where Agile plays an important role, where it's a completely flexible model and you can keep on iterating in a cyclic form. As explained, if you focus on the first phase, which is the requirements gathering phase. Okay, so consider, since I work in a bank, I'll give you an example of what are the requirements in a bank. So a bank operates majorly across two verticals, whether it's a corporate section or a retail. Yes. Are we online? Okay. Sorry for the technical glitch. We'll get back to the topic of discussion. So, yes, I was talking about the requirements phase when the business requirements are laid out by the business heads. That those requirements are translated to technical requirements. During such phases, the stakeholders, the development IT team, as well as the business team sits together and they have a deep, thorough discussion about how will they translate the business requirements to technical requirements. Once the requirements phase is completed, we get onto the architecture and the design phase. Now, architecture and the design phase is nowhere related to the business, but it's completely scoped to the IT team. Once the architecture and design phase has been articulated well by the IT team, it again goes to the review for the business team.
No. Wait. Yes. Now.
All right. Sorry for the technical glitch, audience. I'm back. And I'd like to speak on the development phase. We spoke in depth about the architecture and design. After that, once the complete project architecture has been laid out and the UI UX has been finalized, then comes the development phase. When we talk about agile, when you are in the development phase, there will be client requirements which will be updated after every iteration. In that case, you need to redesign your project architecture as well. So if you see the entire diagram, it keeps looping from the requirements to the architecture and the design to the development. After development, once you develop a particular module and it goes for a system integration testing as well as user acceptance testing, there could be some feedback from the UAT testers, either in closed alpha testing or open beta testing. In that case, you need to refactor some development modules as well. So if you focus from the testing and feedback module, you're again getting back to the development module. Similarly, from testing and feedback, you keep looping to the requirements because if you see modern IT systems, after every feature is released, they are released in phases depending upon the versions, and that's why even when you try to update an app from the store, so this is basically how agile SDLC model works. Now, going to the first phase, which is the requirements phase in SDLC. Requirements are laid out from the end customer. This is nothing but simply business requirements, which then translate into business technical requirements, which then translates into the development effort. Requirements from stakeholders. Stakeholders basically means the business heads, the business team, the IT heads, the technical leads as well. It also involves interference of developers. Now, this is important because whenever, suppose if you're making an app where you need to enable fingerprint login, all right. So what are the encryption algorithms? What is the security involved? How can you achieve it such that when it goes for security testing and assessment, the code does not fail? So here the IT team also plays a major role in covering that aspect. Once developers give a go ahead as well as the test ahead, we step to the next phase of SDLC, defining the architecture. I talk about the modern IT systems today, it is based on typical three-tier architecture. So after the business requirements are translated into technical requirements, here comes the role of a technical architect who decides what will be the backend, what will be the middleware, and what will be the front end. Now, when I talk about the backend, if you consider an e-commerce app like Amazon, which has a listless scroll of data, which is endless data coming from the server. So if you deploy a SQL background, that does not work because it needs to be asset compliance and that is structured data. I mean to say, if you as a user, you are requesting some data from the server, the request goes from the client to the server then processes the query. So here comes the development effort required in the query processing time as well as the response time of the query. So you cannot have the read-only data coming from SQL, otherwise there is time latency. In that case, you need to have data coming from a NoSQL database. If you consider Amazon app, the read-only data, I mean to say the products and the listing categories are coming from a Dynamo NoSQL database, which is basically a document key value pair database, which is sufficient enough to hold even semi-structured and unstructured data. So here I spoke about how the backend is configured and architected. Now when we come to the middleware, a middleware basically is nothing but the data stored in the backend is not in a normalized and formatted form such that it can be shown to the user. It could either be table formatted or JSON formatted or key value pair formatted. In that case, the server plays an important role in formatting that data and translating the request in the form of response back to the client either as XML or JSON format. Now, once the middleware technology and the architecture is defined well, then you come to the foreground applications, whether it is hosted on the web or Android and iOS platforms. Now, since I come from a mobile development background, I will precisely talk about how the technical architect decides about which technology to go on for the front-end development. In this case, in native, all right, in native, there are different technologies. One is hybrid and other is native. If I talk about native technologies, these technologies are hosted by the manufacturers of the OS. If I talk about Android, it's Google. If I talk about Apple, it's iOS. Okay, so these companies have their native programming languages which they encourage the native developers to use. So for example, when I'm an Android developer, they encourage me to use Kotlin for Android development. Now, when deciding which technology to go forward for in developing an Android or iOS app, it could be hybrid, which means a single code base is deployed on both the platforms and it is ready for use. But there are time latency and sluggish issues there because it's basically a bridge which is working on both native platforms. So that's how the technology stack is decided on the front end as well. Once the technology stack is decided, after that comes the last point of defining the design patterns, as you can see. Now, design patterns are important in today's applications because of the subject of separation of concerns. Now, when I talk about separation of concerns, if you consider a huge software, a big software, it comprises of various features, various modules, and hence a number of classes and functions. If you do not structure your project well, the separation of concerns cannot be achieved. And while trying to enhance the software with new modules and refactoring the existing code, you may break the existing functionalities as well. So that can also create a problem. So when I talk about design patterns, it comprises of the UI layer, that is the user interface layer. Then it comprises of the business logics in layer. Then it comprises of the repository layer, and then it comprises of the models layer. So all these modules have separation of concerns such that the functionality is achieved in a proper manner without with an objective to make the code really robust and scalable. So this is the design phase of SDLC. After this, we move on to the next phase, which is the development phase and the most important phase from IT perspective. When I talk about algorithm development, now time complexity comes into an important role here. The faculty as well as students who are from computers and IT in the third and fourth year of engineering might know what time complexity means. So there are two challenges to be covered while developing an algorithm for a software. One is time complexity, another is space complexity. Space complexity nowadays is not a big issue because of enhanced hardware and storage systems. However, when we get to time complexities, it basically means how much time an algorithm takes to produce a desired output based on an input. I mean to say, if there are n elements, and if there is an algorithm to be developed, and if I require n iteration cycles to produce an output, then I can call the time complexity to be linear. For example, if my n stands for two elements, and I need two iterations, then if my n increases to 4, 8, if I plot this on a two-dimensional graph, I will get a linear curve. Similarly, there are different types of time complexities in the ascending order of linear, quadratic, algorithmic, and exponential. If I talk about the quadratic time complexity, for every element you require square of its iteration. For example, if there are 3 elements, then you would need 9 iteration cycles. We all know about bubble sort and selection sort algorithms whose time complexity is basically n square. So if n is the number of input, where n could be any number, then n square is the iteration cycle required to produce a desired output. So whenever we devise algorithms, time complexity plays an important role. If you consider the most efficient sorting algorithm, which is quicksort, it has a logarithmic complexity. Now, why is logarithmic complexity so powerful? Because log into the base 2 is 8. I mean to say, if your n is 3, which means that if your input is 3 elements, then you need log 3 to the base 2 iterations to produce a desired output. For example, if n is 8, log 8 to the base 2 will be 3. So for 8 elements, you need only 3 iteration cycles to produce a desired output, which means it's an efficient algorithm. With this, we come laying out the different cases of time complexity, whether it's worst case, best case, or average case. In that case, whenever the technical requirements are being translated into the development effort, time complexity plays an important role. After that, we move on to the source code development. While developing a code nowadays, since I'm talking about agile, it should be based on certain principles. The first principle we talk about is the solid, where each word stands for an abbreviation. When I talk about S, it stands for single responsibility principle, which means any function in a class should be responsible for doing a particular functionality and should not be responsible for doing any other piece of logic. For example, if a function is responsible for inputting the data, it should not be responsible for formatting the data. The O in the solid principle stands for open for extension, closed for modification. Now this comes into picture when you already have a software with existing modules and then you are enhancing the software to include more modules. In that case, you should not integrate your new modules in the existing modules. Modification is not allowed. You should extend. So the best possible ways of extension is using abstraction. Either you achieve it with the interface. So basically, if you have three methods in an interface, when you have existing modules and then you have more modules, you will add more number of methods in that interface, which will be overridden in the classes which implement that interface. That's how we achieve the open for extension, closed for modification principle. L stands for list principle. Basically, this principle means that you can replace replace the objects of the parent class with the objects of the child class without affecting the functionality. The I stands for interface segregation. Now, basically, what does this mean? Suppose if you have an interface which has three methods for doing three functionalities and you're implementing it, all the classes which implement this interface have to compulsorily override this method. If there is a class who does not want to override one functionality or one module of an interface, but compulsorily we are bound to do that, in that case we need to segregate interface into inner interfaces, so that when you have three classes who are implementing a nested interface, you have the flexibility of incorporating only those functionalities and modules which are in the inner interface and not on the parent interface. Last abbreviation is for dependency inversion. When I talk about dependency inversion, it says that if you consider a Java programming language, you may have different classes, and there will be a lot of classes whose dependencies are required in other classes. For example, consider a class A and class B, where class B's dependency is required in class A. So here, class B is a low module and class A is a dependent module. If you try to create object of class B in class A and start using it, there are memory leak issues. Memory leak is a concept which is heavily used in software development such that the application does not crash, and hence dependency inversion comes into picture, where the high level modules, for example, class A should not be dependent on low level modules, for example, class B in our case, but they should be dependent on abstractions, which means that if you want to provide dependencies from a class that is providing a dependency to a class where the dependency will be injected, you should achieve it through interface or any kind of abstraction. So this is what solid principle means, and it is heavily used in today's market. Apart from that, Agile follows test-driven development. We as faculty and we as students, we go the reverse way, where we develop a software and after that we test it. But Agile goes in a different way. The reason TDD or test-driven development is followed is because if you test or developing software really well, the number of errors
Rahat, I'll be in the meeting. Yes.
All right. So I was speaking about the test-driven development, and I was emphasizing on the fact that we need to keep testing the development modules that we keep building. Now, the reason for this approach is such that if you test your existing software already during the development phase, the probability of occurrence of errors in the testing phase minimizes. All right. This is the basic principle why you need to keep testing your code. How do you test your code? How do you test your classes is covered in the testing phase, which I'll speak after some time. Now, getting on to the third point of source code development, which is reactive programming. This is a new concept in the IT, and it's been evolving just by leaps and bounds on an exponential graph. The reason why reactive programming plays an important role is because if you consider the modern apps such as Amazon or Flipkart or Facebook or even YouTube, you have a list of endless data that keeps on coming from the server. So whenever this data is coming from the server, we need to update the users that there is new data available. If you see a Facebook app, it gives you a notification that new posts are available. This is basically the concept of reactive programming, which says that if there is any new data that's available to the client, then you should notify the users. A simple example is this: if you consider a programming example of integer a, which is holding a value of 10, integer b, which is holding a value of 20, and integer c equals a plus b, so c should always be equal to 30. Now, suppose if I'm modifying the value of a as 15, then C should change to 35, but that does not happen in normal structural programming. C still gives you the output of 30. In this case, when you use reactive programming concepts, even though you manipulate the dependent variables A and B any point in time, C will give you the updated value. That's the basic principle of reactive programming. This is basically achieved in the mobile development space using reactive programming principles, which are available in Java and Kotlin, and Swift, which is used for iOS. On the web, it is available in the JavaScript as well. After reactive programming, we get to automated unit and functional testing. Like in test-driven development, I was speaking about testing your code during the development phase so that the probability of errors are less in the quality assurance phase. Now, when I talk about automated unit testing, now the testing paradigm is basically leveled such that the first or the base is unit testing. Okay. Now, when you talk about unit testing, if you consider a software, you break a software into different modules. Each module has a set of classes. So basically, when you talk about unit testing, it is testing one unit, testing one class. So when a class has a particular functionality, you use unit testing to test a class. Once the unit testing passes, it gives you a positive impact on the test driven development that your classes are functioning really well. Once automation testing is done, after that, the developer himself goes to functional testing. Now, there is a lot of hype about automation testing going on. We as developers, we also do functional testing. I'll tell you how. In the Android, there is a library given by Google, which is Espresso, in which I can write a piece of code. I can run my Android app on a device, and it will start functioning as though a user is giving any input. So basically, it functions like a robotic app. Okay, in this, as suppose if I have a login module, then you'll see the login credentials being entered without any user interaction. Then you'll see a progress bar, a loading, and then you'll go to the product listing page. So it basically automates the entire app without the intervention of a tester or a real-time user case. So that's about automated unit and functional testing. Now, when I talk about testing and debugging, this is not covered in the testing phase. Whenever you develop any app, whether it's on the front end or the back end, you debug. I mean to say, you select some breakpoints in the application where you test your code whether it's working according to a required functionality as you expect. So you basically assert a value depending upon the expected and the actual values. That's where debugging plays an important role. Getting on to the next topic, which is testing phase. When you talk about the testing phase, I already spoke about unit testing, which is basically nothing but testing classes and functions. In Java ecosystem, we have a very heavily used framework for unit testing your classes, which is nothing but JUnit. In Android, we also use JUnit plus Mockito to test. So when I say I'm testing a class, what I'll do is I'll basically assert the expected outcome of a function to a desired value. If that matches, it means that the function is working well as per expectations. So testing classes and functions is basically using a unit test Java framework and testing my classes. Once my unit testing is successfully done, suppose if I have 10 classes and I have applied my JUnit on all the classes, after that I am thorough that the unit testing is working well, which means that the classes are functioning really well. But I'm still left to know when these classes are clubbed together for a software to operate as a whole, how it will function. Suppose if there are dependencies are involved between classes, and when they club together, when a software executes, if there is a crash, so this is a problem of integration testing. That's how we have the SIT testers. SIT stands for software integration testing. Basically what they do is, if you consider a typical three-tier software, they integrate the backend, the front end. The backend could be any database along with the server, along with the front-end applications, either hosted on the web or they are hosted on mobile platforms. After that, in integration testing, once the integration testers give you a go ahead, it means that after your unit testing passed successfully by the developers, integration testing is passed by the SIT testers or the quality analysts. So once the technical perspective of a software is tested as per it should behave, according to the requirements, we move on to the system testing, which is basically nothing but testing front end and back end together. Consider a three-tier architecture, okay, where you log in, the request credentials go onto the server, it goes to the backend, it verifies whether you are a legit user, it sends the response back from the database to the middleware. The middleware then transforms the data into either JSON or XML and sends you a response. This is basically a system, right? So when you test a system, you are testing the entire project architecture. Moving on to the next phase of testing is sanity testing. Now, say suppose if you have unit tested your code well, the software integration testing has been done successfully. After that comes the user acceptance testing. Before user acceptance testing, we do a sanity. Now, what does sanity mean? It is basically checking the critical functionalities of our application, whether they're working fine. Now, when I talk about the critical functionalities, consider an example of if you are expecting the entire software project, okay, live, but if the login functionality is not working at all, how would you come to know about the product listing category, the cards, and the payments module? So sanity is basically nothing but testing the critical phases for a successful functioning of the software. Once the sanity is complete, we for sure know that the critical testing phases are working well, and then the software is launched. Now, whenever a software is launched in Agile, as I told you, we can keep iterating to different phases of SDLC. New requirements may come in the same launch cycle. When I talk about a launch cycle, suppose if you're launching the first version of a software, okay, you show the requirements, okay, you show the software to the client or the end user. And if the user says that, no, this is not the expected functionality, or I want this software to be enhanced to integrate these features and modules, then the requirements are then translated back from the business team to the development team who refactor the existing software. Now, when you're refactoring the existing software, there is a possibility that the existing functionalities might be manipulated or tampered with, because you are basically manipulating the same code. In this, regression testing comes into picture. When you add new modules, basically what regression does is it tests the newly added modules such that it doesn't break the existing functionality. After a sanity, after a unit testing, after SIT testing, after sanity, and after regression comes the security testing. Over here in this testing, since I work in a bank, this is of utmost importance to me, because whatever we develop goes into a thorough security testing phase, where the intruders and the malicious attackers try to attack the software. They try to pin in through the application to get sensitive data that we keep storing. If you consider a banking app, we are actually holding sensitive customer data. So in this case, when I talk about security testing, consider a backend security testing. There is only one way through which you can communicate with a backend. If I consider SQL, then I write a SQL query on my server and I hit my database. Consider an example of SQL injection. SQL injection is a way through which malicious attackers can try to manipulate the data in the database. That's an example of backend testing. When I talk about front-end testing, if you talk about Android, iOS apps, okay, so there are different features of different levels of testing here. One is to protect your source code. For example, if you're downloading and installing an Android application or iOS application in your phone, after that, if you tamper the phone such that you root that device, after rooting the device, you get access to critical data of the user. In that case, we need to make sure that at the application level, the source code of that software is protected from being tampered. So that is one of the things. After application level testing comes the way a application, whether it's a web application hosted on a domain, whether it's an Android app or an iOS app, the way they communicate with the server. We know that modern communication between client and server happens over HTTPS. Now, HTTPS is nothing but a combination of two protocols, hypertext transfer protocol, as well as secure socket layer. And most of us say that HTTPS is secure. It is secure, but it is not 100% secure. In HTTPS, basically a handshake happens between the client and the server, where the client needs to know or needs to verify whether the server that it is going to send the data is a legit server, or it's a proxy or a man in the middle attack. When I talk about man in the middle attack, if a client wants to communicate with the server, there could be a proxy server who's monitoring the data that the client is sending to the server. In this case, if consider an example of a banking application where the user is entering his login ID and password, and there is a man in the middle attack who's intercepting that data through a proxy server. This creates a lot of problem, and hence here comes another phase of security, which is how would the communication happen between the client and the server. In this case, we use a concept of SSL pinning. Basically, what the problem with HTTPS is, whenever you communicate with the server, it has a SSL certificate. Now, if you go from the browser and you're communicating with the server which has a SSL certificate, if my device is rooted, I can manipulate my phone to accept a list of SSL certificates which are not publicly published by the certifying authorities. I mean to say that if I'm a man in the middle attack, I would have a rooted phone, and I would manipulate or tamper my browser such that it accepts the SSL server, which is not a legit SSL certificate. In that case, we use a concept of SSL pinning. Here, what happens is the banking application, okay, it has its SSL certificate. We pin that SSL certificate in the Android and the iOS apps, such that when the client goes to take a request from client to the server, it requests the server to send its SSL certificate. In response, when the server sends the SSL certificate, it is basically based on a asymmetric key encryption, comprising of the private and the public key pair. What the client does is the client fetches the public key from the SSL certificate provided by the server, and it encrypts a random data. It sends the encrypted data as a challenge to the server, where the server, if it's a legit server, it will have the SSL certificate. If it has the SSL certificate, it knows the private key of that SSL certificate. From the private key of the SSL certificate, it tries to decode the data that a client has encrypted and sends back to the client. Now the client can verify whether the data is coming from a legit server or from a proxy or man in the middle attack. This is the entire concept of SSL pinning. After security testing comes the deployment phase. Now, when I talk about the deployment phase, if you consider an Android app, if I want to publish my app onto the Play Store, I would directly not make it production ready because I don't know how would it behave when users download it. When I'm going through the testing phases, there are a limited number of testers who test my app, but I want a realistic scenario, a real world scenario when the users target my application. And here comes alpha testing. Whenever my app is ready, whether it is Android or iOS, and I'm hosting it on particular platforms, namely Google Play Store or Apple App Store, I first release the application for alpha testing. Alpha testing is nothing but a closed loop testing where internal members from an organization could be a part of alpha testing program, maybe 3 or 5 testers. So when this app is already live or published on App Store or Play Store, only these set of testers get the download link. and it is not visible to the end users. What these testers do is they test the production live app and they give a go ahead signal. Once a go ahead signal is given from a limited number of testers in closed alpha testing, the app is then open to beta testing. Now, if you see any apps, okay, on Play Store or App Store, at the bottom or the rear end, you see join the beta program. What does it mean? You are basically opening the testing program from a closed loop testing to open loop testing. Open loop testing involves a number of users. Anyone who wants to join the beta program can join, and then they would get a download link. So basically, when you open your app for a beta testing, you get a real case scenario of how the app is behaving. So that's all about beta testing. Once beta testing is done, then there is acceptance testing, which is nothing but transformation from your alpha or beta to the production stage. Going on to the next slide. This is an important concept when it comes to agile, and if you see modern today's jobs, they list this skill as a requirement. You need to know what is continuous integration and continuous deployment. As I told you in agile phase, what happens is when you come from business requirements and analysis phase to the development to the testing phase, there would be a need from getting back to the testing phase to the development phase. So there needs to be a continuous integration concept. In SDLC, we know what is VCS, version controlling system. Basically, when you release a software, you release the base version, then you enhance the code, then you release another enhanced version. So there is versioning happening. In this case, you need to maintain your code. If you maintain your code on a local machine, and if God forbid, if something happens to your hardware, then the code is gone. In that case, you need a central repository on which you will save your code. So the most used central repositories nowadays to save the code is a Git. Earlier it was SVN. So a Git is basically a version control system where you make the changes, you add your changes to the Git, you commit your changes, and then you push your changes from your local machine to the remote server. Now, what does a testing team do? Basically, when a software is ready, you pass that software build to a tester, but that's a manual process. If you want continuous integration and deployment, whenever you're making a software, you're committing the changes to Git, you're pushing from the local machine to the remote server. After that, there is a dedicated CI/CD, which is continuous integration and deployment server. Today, one of the best examples I can give you about the open source CI/CD tool today is Jenkins. What does Jenkins do? Jenkins is configured to keep polling the Git, okay, to check if there is any commit. When a developer makes any changes to the code, he commits the code, okay, and then he pushes to Git. Now, when a push is triggered on Git, the Jenkins server is already polling and monitoring the Git server to check if there are any commits made. When there are any commits made, it basically runs the unit test that we spoke about in the earlier phase. Once all the unit testing passes successfully, and after that, I also spoke about the automation UI testing, which is functionality testing. So that server is responsible for fetching the code from the Git, unit testing the classes, functionality testing using modern Espresso frameworks, if it's Android, for example. Once that is done, then it basically sends an email notification to the testers that there is a new build available. So this is how continuous integration and deployment happens, so that whenever any changes are made by the developer, tested successfully by him, and the changes are pushed to a remote repository such as Git, the polling happens from Jenkins to Git, and it fetches the entire piece of software. Unit testing is success. Functionality testing should be a success. Once that is there, the build is passed on to the testers through an email notification, and the testers can then test the app immediately. So this is where continuous integration and deployment plays an important role. Finally, this is the deployment phase in SDLC. When I talk about the deployment phase, consider an Android app or an iOS app. These apps needs to be published on their respective portals, whether it's Google Play Store or Apple App Store. If I talk about a website, it needs to be hosted on a particular domain. So once the project clears alpha and beta tests, it is deployed. Okay, the front-end applications, namely website, is hosted on a domain, as I told you, and mobile apps are released on respective consoles for the users to start downloading and using the apps. The backend application is hosted on cloud, okay, to be able to intercept and respond to real-time users. Now, when I talk about hosting a backend application on the cloud, in the software making phase, when you have a backend application, it is not able to handle a lot of client requests. For example, if you consider the targeted audience of an Amazon app, it's billions, millions, and billions of users. In that case, you need a robust backend server which can asynchronously service the request and responses back to the client. So that's how deployment of backend application happens on a cloud. So this is about the deployment phase. Right. So before concluding my topic, I'll tell you the significance why I had a thorough discussion about agile methodologies, because I felt it was necessary. When I was going through all these requirements, which are the demanded skills in IT market today, I was not able to connect the dots. Why are these skills in a demand? But after having 4 years of relevant work experience in IT, now I can connect the dots well together, and I can share that piece of information with you to really understand the importance of software development lifecycle in building modern, robust, scalable applications. Yeah, that's it from my end. Thank you. Yeah. Well, before ending this, I'd like to ask if you have any questions for me.
Hello, Kunal.
Yes, sir.
Kunal, here, participant have one question: how to do security testing while doing the whole process? Security
Okay.
testing.
Okay, so security testing. If I give you an example of, if I'm being an Android developer, I make APKs, okay, which is basically nothing but application packages, which is nothing. When you download app from the Play Store, you're basically downloading an APK. Whenever I'm developing a software, okay, all my business logics, all my code lies in that APK. If I do not consider the security aspect of that APK, that APK can be reverse engineered. When I talk about reverse engineering, I'm talking about code obfuscation. In layman terms, I can convert a APK file to a zip file, which is basically a compressed file. From that zip file, I can fetch my Java classes in the form of DEX, which is called as Dalvik executables. There are a lot of open source tools such as JDGUI, which actually convert DEX files to the source Java files. So all my effort that I'm putting in, consider a banking application, okay, a banking APK. Now, what could a malicious attacker do is convert that APK to a zip file, extract those DEX files, or use an open source tool such as JDGUI to convert those Dalvik executables to a jar file. And from a jar file, we all of us know that you can get access to a Java file. So here is where security testing plays an important role. What we exactly do is we use, so Google offers an open source tool which is called as ProGuard. Now what ProGuard does is it basically renames the entire class file names, the functions names, and everything. Okay, so even if a malicious attacker tries to reverse engineer my code through code obfuscation, he won't understand the business logics, right? Say suppose if I'm renaming my entire class file name, renaming every programming statement, then it becomes very difficult to understand the semantics of the application. So in there are a lot of open source tools, as I told you about ProGuard as well, and there are a lot of purchasing tools as well which are available. For example, Dex Protector and DexGuard. These companies actually take your APK and encrypt those classes. So during the runtime, basically the classes are decrypted and the APK works. Otherwise, even if you try to tamper the application with your rooted device and you try to reverse engineer your code, you would get an encrypted file, which is of no use.
Yes, thank you, Kunal. One more question is there. Which is better, Kotlin or Flutter? And which
nice
should
question.
I consider for further development or future development?
Fantastic question. Okay, so I have explored Flutter as well. But from my personal opinion, I'm not giving you any judgment about what the development community thinks about Kotlin and Flutter. But from my personal experience, Kotlin is much more powerful as compared to Dart. Dart, which is so see, Flutter is basically an ecosystem, all right, and it is a framework. In that framework, if you want to develop apps, okay, so basically your coding effort minimizes, where you can code just once and deploy your targeted apps to Android and iOS. But then your learning curve comes a bit, there's a long and steep learning curve for learning Dart. Dart is a new programming language by Google, which is used in the Flutter framework. Now, when I compare Dart with Kotlin, okay, Dart is very similar to Java. But being a Java developer, I know the pitfalls and disadvantages of Java in today's modern applications. One of the most famous being null pointer exceptions. So in this case, if I want to avoid the pitfalls or disadvantages of Java when I'm coding a software, Kotlin comes into picture. Kotlin was invented to overcome the disadvantages of Java. In that case, I know that when the number of crashes that I was facing in Android with Java will be minimized a lot with the advantages Kotlin offers. To talk about Flutter, yes, if you wish to explore Flutter, you can, but Flutter is advised to be used only for MVPs, for minimum viable products. If you're making a full-fledged application, then there are a lot of open issues yet in Flutter. If you go to the GitHub page of Flutter, you will see a lot of open issues. And if you're trying to communicate with the device hardware, especially Wi-Fi drivers and Bluetooth, that's where Flutter is still not capable to do that. So in that case, I would advise we can stick to Kotlin because Kotlin is offering a lot of competition to Java frameworks on the web as well. As we know that Google advised Android developers to go Kotlin first in 2019, leaving behind the legacy of Java. It shows the impact Kotlin has. So if you are as really skilled in Kotlin, you can work on the front end in Android. Parallelly, yeah, there is a new hot topic in the market today, which is known as Kotlin native and Kotlin multi-platform. So using Kotlin multi-platform, you can use the same code base and share it on iOS as well. You using Kotlin programming language, you can work on the server. So on the server, we know that the most widely used software is Spring, the framework. But Ktor is a newly launched framework in Kotlin. You can explore it, which is much, much better. I've used it personally, and I feel Kotlin is much capable of that. So that I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. One more is there related to security side. How do we apply alpha at security level?
See, basically, alpha has a different alpha and security. These both are different things. Maybe the framing of the question is not correct.
Yes, I feel the same. Yeah. Maybe something you can say related to that alpha.
Yeah, alpha testing. So alpha testing is basically when your security testing has passed, okay, and you are deploying your Android or iOS app to their respective consoles, and after that alpha testing happens, where your app is published only to a closed group of users, typically from the same company. That's what alpha testing is all about.
So what can be the difference between alpha and beta versions of any app?
Okay, so suppose if I'm making a banking app, okay, I would take Gmail addresses of maybe 3 or 4 people from the company and pass them the link of alpha testing. So now when anyone apart from these 4 people go to the Play Store, they wouldn't find the app on the Play Store or the App Store. But only these 4 people who are dedicated alpha testers, they will see that app in the product listing page on the respective portals of Google and Apple. So that's closed testing, what I talk about alpha. When I talk about a beta program, okay, so beta program is available to all of us. Like if any targeted audience goes to an app to test a beta APK, all right, on Android, then you can join and become a beta tester. There is no restriction or limitation to to keep it restricted only to a closed set of users. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir. One more question is there.
Right.
Related to Kotlin.
Okay.
Kotlin or React, which is better?
Definitely Kotlin. The disadvantage with React is it has a bridging concept involved. When you're trying to use React Native, you basically have a JavaScript And similarly, iOS also understands only the framework level of code, which is built native. In Google, it's built on Java and Kotlin. In iOS, it's built on Objective-C and Swift. So when you're using React Native, okay, on these platforms, it's basically using JavaScript. So you need a bridge, and that bridge creates a time latency or a lag when the user is using that app, which causes the app to be sluggish in real time. That's why Kotlin is preferred.
Yes, Kunal, thank you very much. One more question is there. In the meantime, you just switch off the presentation. I'll be back with the question.
Yes, okay.
Can you please tell us more about why cloud is used for backend
Right.
and why it is so robust?
Why is cloud used for backend and?
And why it is so robust?
Okay. To answer this question, when I talk about consider a software, okay, where you have thousands of millions of billions of clients, okay, which would be hitting a particular server. That server should be capable of handling asynchronous requests. When I talk about asynchronous requests, when a client is requesting a server, the other client should not be blocked. All right, parallel request of the client should also be serviced. In this case, we need a backend application which is so robust such that it can have a number of threads in the thread pool executor. So basically, when you're sending a request from the client to the server has a worker thread, okay, which is called as a dispatcher thread. So suppose if I have 100 requests to be serviced at one time, I need to have a capacity of running 100 threads at the same time. All right, so that's what a cloud basically does. It is capable of thread pool executors and dispatchers and worker threads. That's where the cloud plays an important role.
Yes, Kunal, thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
We can conclude the session.
All right.
I am thankful to our resource person, Mr. Kunal, for such a wonderful and informative session. On behalf of all the participants, faculty members, college management, principal, director, sir, I once again thank you. With this, we end the session for today, and the details for the tomorrow session will be shared to you through the WhatsApp group. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So before my heartfelt gratitude, I feel highly obliged and honored to get back to the college that you graduated from. They were given a platform to share your experiences in the field that you're working on. And I look forward for more such events. I wish all of us good health, wealth, and happiness.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you all the participants for their. Yes, we can take him on live on air. Good afternoon, sir.
Very good
Rana,
afternoon.
sir. Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon.
Yes. You just address the people, sir.
A very good afternoon, audience. Very good afternoon,
Very good
Kunal.
afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon,
And all the audience connected with us for this program. Indeed, it is our pleasure that Kunal has delivered a talk. Although there was some technical glitch in between, I was attending the whole session. But the session was wonderful. You have taken a long journey through the concepts of software testing. And definitely, I'm sure people must have enjoyed your talk and your session and your presentation as well. And this is my great pleasure to propose a thank to my own dear Kunal, who is in touch with me for last maybe 10 years or so. So it was happy meeting you in this occasion and on this platform, because now the world is mostly virtually connected. And
Right.
we have seen this virtual connect with you as well.
Right.
So thank you so much, Kunal, with being with us. And it was nice that you accepted our invitation and delivered that session. So we are all proud of you. And as we know, you are doing very well. So part of your knowledge you have shared with our audience, that was indeed a very great gesture from your side. Thank you so much, Kunal, for being with us.
You're most welcome, sir. I feel highly obliged and honored.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Rahat, we can wind up the session. Yes, sir, we can close the session.